Welcome, Ke'oni, and welcome everyone. I'm so happy to welcome you back to my channel. Last time we spoke about the ancient Lemurian wisdom in connection to the powerful potential in our spinal cord and how important it is in our current awakening and remembering of the most ancient codes from inside out. And today I would love to discuss how do you remember or recall your ancient lineage teachings and doctrines about not only Lemuria, but also pre-Lemuria and the beings, the guardians of the earth that prepared her for not only holding space for physical evolution, but also spiritual evolution of source descending into individual forms. So welcome back, Ke'oni. Great to see you here.
Mahalo, great to see you again, Sister Julia. I look forward to this conversation. Yeah, this is, going back into what we call ho'omaka'ana or the origins of organic life here on the planet. Seems to be really loud conversation with so many of us. So this seems to be a super relevant conversation, sister.
Yes, and I want to thank you for mentioning Hyperborea in your latest book. It's at the very beginning, at the start, you mention Helena Blavatsky writing about the pre-humanity era, which led me to check if we have an asteroid Hyperborea. We do. The designated number is 1309. And when I checked it in my chart, it's conjunct my natal sun. And I believe it's conjunct your natal Neptune. And then when I checked anyone I know who is comprehending the entire processional cycle and really feeling guided to understand the entire evolutionary journey of planet Earth, we all seem to have Hyperborea prominent. So it's such a beautiful validation or activation point that is, I feel, is really guiding us to remember the most ancient origins and divine blueprints, the original intention for what the human potential is on Earth at this time. So thank you for that insight, for that inspiration. And what do you know of, or what do you remember about these custodians of Earth's blueprints for what was meant to be as her highest potential?
Mahalo, thank you for asking. I'll preface this by sharing that a lot of what I do share is of my own memory. I'm also fortunate to have received such great wisdom uh, and guidance from my grandmother, Kawiki Onalani. And, she received her guidance from her elders and so forth and so on, stemming 1017 generations. So I speak on behalf of my memory, but I'm also speaking on behalf of my entire lineage. And what I really appreciate about that is when I match my own memory with my lineage, it matches. And so it does give me a confidence in order to share it in a way. Um, when I look into my memory and my lineage memory of what occurred prior to this blooming of organic life on our planet, is something known as the Mea Ne'e. And the Mea Ne'e are these plasmic ancestors, and we consider them ancestors because they are the founders of the conditions for organic life. And so that might be something really fun to play with too, is that the Meane, the plasmic beings, are not so much responsible for seeding humanity. What they did was they provided the conditions for humanity to exist on this planet. And the way that this sort of worked out is that our planet was this rough scaffolding. And the Maine, these plasmic beings, converged onto our planet and they designed two very specific things. And that is first, the magnetic field, and then second, the atmosphere to which you and I enjoy. And of course, organic beings, this is why we're possible on this planet, is because of our magnetic field and our atmosphere. But their journey didn't stop there because oftentimes when we feel into the man, the plasmic beings, perhaps the question is, well, where did they go? Did they leave the planet? Like, what happened to the plasmic beings, the Meanee? So, from what we can gather from our stories and what I feel I remember as well, is that the Meanee are actually the water on our planet because they turn themselves into the water. And this means that we have access. Our primordial ancestors are all over our planet. Our atmosphere is actually comprised of water. And so the Meane, our cosmic ancestors, have never left. They also exist within us. And with the work of Veda Austin, coming into recognition of just how brilliant water is and that it's a master record keeper, and not just a record keeper, but it allows itself to be coded. It's amorphous in many ways. And so if we can come into recognition and fluency of water, we can actually come into fluency of cosmic history as well.
Beautiful. That was one of the revelations I had during a dream when I was contemplating Hyperborea connection to Lemuria, Atlantis, and current age very intensely for numerous days. And then in the middle of a night, I was awoken, and this very similar message came through where my attention was brought to the beginning of Earth's journey when she was held by these plasmic beings being prepared for the spark of source coming through and assisting her in being the guardian for not only physical evolution, but also spiritual evolution of souls fragment in individual beings. And, and I would love your view on how this plasmic energy influenced Lemuria and how it was very alive or dominant during Lemurian era in comparison to the Atlantean era that feels symbolically more crystalline, and then perhaps even extending that to all the way to today. How do you feel? Where do we stand in terms of the plasmic crystalline? It feels like we are called to come full circle, embodying the paradox of both and neither, being very fluent in our remembering and awakening connection to all that is, but also holding that individual structure of our unique puzzle piece that we play in cosmic harmony.
Yeah, the story of humanity is a story of materialization.
Mm.
And what the Mane did was they provided these conditions for us to begin this experimentation of what it means to materialize. Because in order for us to spiritualize, we must first fully materialize.
Mm.
And so with Lemuria, with Mu and Atlantis, they have very different approaches to the process of materialization, so much so that they actually function as alternating currents. Mu or Lemuria is one half of an alternating current, and Atlantis is another half of an alternating current. And so they must actually spin in order to complete the actual materialization process. So we come into spiritualization. I want to preface first by sharing something unique about what the Mane gathered upon Earth in order to provide the conditions, because you said spirituality as well. Because when we talk about the magnetic field and the atmosphere, that can feel a little technical, perhaps a little mechanical. And of course, it's necessary because we're coming into materialization, but there's also a spiritual component that was brought upon the earth as well. And in the story, in the doctrines, before the Mane came onto Earth, they went to two separate places in order to harvest certain kinds of energy. First, they went to Mars, and then they went to Venus. Upon going to Mars and Venus, then they came to Earth. What we perceive that they are doing is that they were collecting these alternating currents of feminine and masculine energy. And so spiritually, for you and I as human beings and all organic life, we have this alternating current of feminine and masculine energy. Now, the goal for us is to take that energy of feminine and masculine energy and spin it so fast that we come into an androgynous or holistic self. When we're in an androgynous and holistic self, that qualifies us for the actual spiritualization.
Mm.
And so, like the saga to which we're all experiencing right now is coming into fluency of feminine and masculine energy. And one of the challenges of that is to not play favorites, but to host those energies within our physical body. And then our physical body becomes the not only the receptacle of that, but we begin to broadcast that as well. In order to broadcast that holistic androgynous energy, those energies within us must be spinning at such a rapid speed that it exudes from us. People call that resonance, some call that our aura. And so that's the goal. And that's what the man they have remained on this planet to support us in ensuring that that spin is at a specific speed. What I perceive to have happened when we transitioned from Lemuria into Atlantis is that spin got so slow that it fell to one side, thus splitting us in actual genders. And so the Atlantean experiment that we're all having in this materialization is now the bodies to which we exist in right now, which I'm a gendered male, you are a gendered female, that shouldn't disqualify us from being fluent in both feminine and masculine, but we perceive that many have that experience of thinking that because we are a certain sex or gender, that means we must favor one half of us and then maybe even dismiss the other half. So we're perpetuating this slow speed to where it's fallen on one side. And I love to share that because many people will have memories about the fall of Mu or the fall of Lemuria. And oftentimes that is accompanied by this discussion about war. Now, in my memory, and when I retrieved the information from my lineage, there was no war in Mu. It's actually inconceivable. That was a civilization that they could not have engaged in war because they could not have designed such a thing. And so the fall was what I just shared. It's the spin was so slow it fell. That was what opened us up to the Atlantean timeline, the Atlantean civilization, to which, Julia, we are likely still in. Because I know that many people share that in 12,000 or 10,000 BC or 12,000 years ago that there was an Atlantean cataclysm. And my response to that is, yeah, it was one of the Atlantean cataclysms. It didn't end the Atlantean civilization. We're still in it. And I know that we're still in it because I can perceive myself to still be a gendered male, which means that the spin is so slow that it's still fallen. We need to pick up that coin once again, and we need to learn and remember how to spin it so that we come into our energetic androgyny, thus closing the circuit of Atlantis and Mu once again. We are harmonizing those two specific timelines in order to create an oscillation that actually is compatible and qualifies us for spiritualization.
Amazing. They couldn't have been not fall completely, but destruction that was absolute or all-encompassing globally because there were survivors and the continuation of human consciousness on Earth was present all the way to today. And I feel there is a higher purpose to why collectively we are guided to remember the ancient times. We are, through our own remembering, we're actually helping Earth herself remember the entire evolutionary cycle and help heal the Akashic records and dissolve the pain of atrocities that occurred while she was going through the descent and sleep and the nightmare, symbolically speaking. It I think it's not coincidental that modalities like QHHT, quantum healing hypnosis, and many other past life regressions, as well as spontaneous recalls of most ancient history, is happening in increasing numbers. Would you like to comment on that, the importance of it, and even how passionate you are about guiding people within their own records, within the spine? There's
Mm.
such potency in this. What do you feel is the true reason for it?
Yeah, so much. This is so fun, right, Julia? Because um, if we are functioning as crystalline, this means that we're invited now to make an assessment of the crystal that is the self. And one of the things that is distracting us from that is this modern construct called academia,
Mm.
where many of us are being pulled out of our own crystal to examine other people's crystals. And thus we go into mimicry and plagiarism and whatnot when we're actually being invited to make an assessment of our own crystal, right? The origin is through us. From that proper assessment, then we come into actual spiritualization. And the reason why I want to share it like this is because when we go into the spinal cord, and just some background about the Ivi Kuamo, the spinal cord, is that it's the obelisk of the self according to Mu culture. And if we can read our spinal cord, we know the path of proper materialization, which brings us into spiritualization. Coccyx, sacral, lumbar, thoracic vertebrae is all about coming into proper materialization. Once we come into the cervical vertebrae, which does encompass the brain glands and masses, then we come into the actual protocols of spiritualization. And so when we go into the very opening of the cervical vertebrae, which is C7, the code of C7 is involution. Now, that's a little interesting because we're fed this constant evolution, and this is what I was told. I'm not going to speak for anyone else, but you just got to keep evolving, evolving, evolving until you reach a certain point. And then, most of us were exhausted. It's like, I keep doing, keep doing, keep doing. My gosh, right? Well, C7, the opening of spiritualization says, actually, from evolution, you must now evolve. It's all about involution. Yeah, which is actually asking us it's time to make an assessment. And so, no matter where you are in the world, you must now recompile yourself. It's like Isis, right? The story of Isis, or about the dismembered body, having to bring that dismembered body back together. Yeah, that's what's happening in C7, is we must now reassemble ourselves and then read our crystal, because our contribution is you and I making a proper assessment of our own crystal. I specifically think that this is so important as we come into what we perceive to be this age of Aquarius, because many people will say that Aquarius is futuristic. And so if we feel into that and believe that narrative, that means more evolution,
Mm.
more going, 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 right? One thing I want to share about my relationship with Aquarius and that futuristic aspect is it's futuristic because it loves the process of getting somewhere.
Mm.
That's why it's futuristic. And so it also loves the process of getting into the fluency of that crystal of itself so that it can supply and support a proper assessment. That assessment of our own crystal is what qualifies our actual contribution.
That is so beautiful. And it actually explains why we also feel the potency of the alpha omega point that we are living right now, that it's actually a circle when you then engage with the involution process, right? Would you like to touch on that? The closing the circle?
Yeah, yeah. Well, okay, here's how I want to share that is in the process of materialization in Mu and Lemuria, it's about the absorption of love. Because I want to insert love now. It's about the absorption of love. That's Mu. That's Lemuria. We come into the absorption of love. So of course there's going to be this experiment of materialization. We're bringing love into the formulation of a being. When we transition into the Atlantean timeline, it's all about the challenging of love. Because in order to come into fluency of love, it must be deliberately challenged. And so Atlantis is all about the challenging of love. In order to close that circuit of Lemuria, of Mu, and Atlantis, we must reconcile the challenging of love to bring it back to the absorption of love. This is why I share, my message is Aloha Ma, and Aloha Ma means self-reflective love. Can we love ourselves back to source even when we've been through a timeline of challenging love? Can I still feel as if I deserve love? Do I feel as if I deserve to be loved? Or do I feel I have to continuously earn it? That's what patriarchy and academia is telling us, is that there's no end to earning. You got to keep earning, earning, earning. And so that circuit is not being closed. Throughout the challenging of love, can we still value ourselves as worthy of being loved? And, sometimes love, even love becomes a buzzword, and it's maybe elusive. It becomes elusive. I think that's part of the challenge too, is to always feel it's something that we need to attain rather than it's something that we just are. And perhaps the riddle is that in a time of challenging love, that we simply just spontaneously remember that we are that love. And immediately we just close that circuit. That's going to empower and vitalize the cervical vertebrae or the spiritualization of the self. And from there, the only outcome is this thing called transfiguration.
Beautiful. Again, not a coincidence that modalities that are on the rise are modalities like gene keys and human design and astrology, galactic astrology, that are because of the rise of interest in getting to know oneself more than ever before. People are becoming hyper focused on studying the self, understanding their own unique story. So that makes sense. It seems that we are being guided collectively to start returning from learning externally to learning the truth from inside out.
Yeah, it's the extractions and the excavations. I had a recent conversation with Heather Ensworth, who we're both friends of, and in my assessment in our conversation, because we are talking about something similar about closing that circuit, right, with Lemuria, with Atlantis, or just coming into a whole being. And Heather asked me, she's like, "Well, how would one go about that?" I said, "Okay, step number one could potentially be, do you even find yourself interesting?" That might be step number one, because maybe unconsciously, many of us were consistently and catastrophically ejecting the self because we find other people or things more interesting than ourselves. And therefore, we're not available to close that circuit. We're not available to read our own crystal. And therefore, we can't give an assessment. We're going to continue to give assessments of other people's crystals, of other people's lives. Once again, that's all academia is. Rather than, okay, do I even find myself interesting? And this is for me, this is when we go into coccyx sacral lumbar, those three first chambers of the spinal cord, those are very feminine in nature. And feminine energy is all about establishment. If I'm not established, if I don't find myself interesting, I have to constantly eject. I don't have a relationship with my feminine, which means my masculine, that thoracic vertebrae who loves activity, I'm always going to need instructions from the exterior conditions to tell me what my activity should be, rather than coccyx sacral lumbar, that feminine chamber is the actual informant that offers me instructions. And so I must first become established. And one of the practical ways to which we can all become established is just a simple question like that: do I even find myself interesting? Like maybe I could get to know myself. Like, who am I? Maybe I should spend some time with myself in the forest and be like, wow, what are my dreams and my desires? What do I feel independent of anyone telling me what is approved of me to be? Like that will be step number one. And that's actually all of us reorienting ourselves back into the goddess of ourselves. And many of us know that the feminine is also an oracle.
Mm.
And so once the goddess is reestablished, what does an oracle do? An oracle channels information. Finally, we're reinstated with our oracle, who's now going to translate what the crystal says.
It's beautiful. I feel so happy to see this inner wisdom coming back online, and I'm witnessing these oracles being activated left, right, and center in my community. It is incredible the quality of information that is coming from inside out, from increasing number of people. It's beautiful that we are coming back to this. And by the way, everything that you're describing here, for anyone who is new to you, you have taken time and poured your heart into your latest book, where you describe all this in beautiful detail, including incredible exercises. Plus, you have a beautiful body of work on your website, plenty there to engage with, to start activating all this information from inside out. So I highly recommend it. It was a deeply valued book. I actually look forward to
Oh,
reading it again and then
oh,
starting and practicing it too.
mahalo. Thank you so much, Julia. And yeah, I've retrieved this from my lineage and from the Mu doctrines, and coming into proper fluency of the spinal cord can do wonders for us coming into actual materialization, fulfillment of materialization, so that we qualify for the actual spiritualization process.
Thank you. I think the key message that you feel so passionate about is repairing the hype about ascending spiritually, activating the third eye and all the higher senses while totally forgetting the body, the physicality, and the materialization, as you say, right?
Yeah, and specifically that groundedness is feminine.
Mm,
And so we can even see how we've been fed, the ejecting of the feminine by always focusing on things that actually take us into dissociation
mm,
rather than our groundedness. There's a word in Hawaiian and in Mu when we talk about the feminine. Sometimes it's poetically referred to as po'ai. Po'ai means sphere, it means a circle, but it also means domain.
mm.
And so coming back into our domain, right? Our groundedness, then from there we can begin to express ourselves from a place that is so incredibly authentic to us. And one fun thing that we may begin to realize, just like you're sharing about the oracles are coming online, yeah, for sure. And as the oracles come online, we're going to realize that there's actually about 8 billion approved calendars.
What?
Yeah, because each and every one of
Like,
us
well, of course.
yeah, actually has our own specific calendar. What happened in Atlantis
Mm,
is that there was a consolidation, an agreed upon calendar
mm,
to where everyone became submissive to.
mm,
In Mu, because when I speak into Mu and people want me to give dates, I'm like, I can give dates that can match to what we perceive to be dates and time, but they existed in a time that was very different because they all knew themselves to be their very own calendar. And to think that the beings could actually coexist like that without going into dissociation, but honoring themselves as a calendar, honoring one another as a calendar. And that's likely because, right, they were informed by that specific being, that thing that existed within them, rather than with Atlantis. Remember, it's all about the challenging of love. And so now, we're being removed of the body and then taking cues from something that exists outside of us, which is just a part of the challenging of love. And I want to share with Atlantis. And oftentimes when I speak into Atlantis, maybe some people think that I am, in some way displeased of it. No, Atlantis was incredibly necessary. Remember, this is an alternating current. Atlantis is a necessary alternating current. Challenging of love, we must experience this. And so I'm so grateful to the immense creativity of Atlantis and how it actually asked us, it said, how would you love to challenge love? How it asked, everyone was asked that. And our lives and how we experience our lives today are the choices that we have made in order to challenge love. Of course, the key is through all this challenging, can we still affirm ourselves to be love? Because mu Lemuria is the absorption of love. And so with C7 saying involution, okay, we've gone out there, we've looked around, right? We've been curious. It's time to come home and make that assessment and thus close the circuit.
Precisely. So beautiful. Yes, the understanding the difference between love that has not yet experienced the fullness of creation in the physical realm that is deeply polarized, didn't yet experience the contrast, and didn't yet experience the absolute freedom of choice and the full playground that Atlantis offered us. And then through those choices, learning about the deep contrast, the shadow, the light, then going through the pain of that um, illusion of separation. And now I feel we are collectively guided. Our role is to heal the pain. The Chiron is is actually completing his journey since its discovery next year. It'll reach the degree since it was discovered. So it went through the entire zodiac since Chiron is in our collective awareness. How beautiful. And the result, as we collectively help with the healing and enlightening the records and returning to the center, becoming the activated oracles, it feels like we can finally experience the actual original intent for what the potential for human vessel is for spirit, how
Yeah.
to experience itself as an awakened avatar. It feels like we have
Wow.
so many masters walking this earth in the awakening process.
I mean, yes, sister, that's fascinating. So Chiron is closing its own circuit.
Yes.
Wow. Wow. And I love the sophistication of that, right? Because of course Chiron has existed for eons, right? But our recognition of it coincided with it now being able to close the circuit. And so there's so many signs that tell us that humanity is coming into a point of completion.
Mm.
And we're all being encouraged, right, to come back into the absorption of love to complete that Atlantean timeline. And once we complete that Atlantean timeline and we reunite with that new timeline, that is the completion event in total. And so it really feels like we're on that path right now of this collective transfiguration.
Mm. And it would make sense that what we are going through is necessary if the prophesized 1,000-year-old peace is to come, right? There can be no global peace unless the wounds are healed, the lessons are integrated, the love is experienced, sovereign, and we know each other as one and the same, reflected into infinity.
Yes, and it really does come down to that resonance too, because I know that many of us, we have ideas of what world peace can look like, but of course, we need to be the evidence of that. And so, right, coming back into that consolidation within the self so that when we apply ourselves to the external conditions, we're actually the evidence, which means we have authority to join that global peace. I feel like with academia, we're caught in rhetoric and in thought and theory and not actual experience. And remember, feminine is all about groundedness, being in the body. So experience. That's why feminine language is all about sensation. And even through the challenging of love, just like you're sharing, like all that pain, everything that we're experiencing, that's part of the process of coming into fluency of the self as well, but not to get stuck in that or overpowered by that, but to fully integrate that so that we can close that circuit. But yeah, sister, I feel like the oscillation is also just feeling so fast too. I feel like the collective is proverbially picking up that coin, that thing that fell, right? And we're beginning to just speed it up a little bit until we come into this rapid speed where it comes into that transfiguration event.
Mm, absolutely. I would love you to speak to the presumption that when we reach certain level of mastery, that there is just this constant bliss, high level of love, peace, and joy. And I am observing that in myself, that there is constant inner peace, but ability to remain peaceful while um, observing or allowing the feeling of grief through compassion for another's pain, and an hour later celebrating amazing win. So within 24 hours, we can experience a full spectrum of emotional richness that human body can hold. Yet there is this constant centeredness in peace. Can you speak to that? Do you agree?
Yeah. I first want to share, you're speaking into contrast, right? Which is just a quality of our experience. And of course, we know that that to which actually designs a rainbow is just that contrast. And so if we do exist in this rainbow experience or this rainbow bridge, it's all about contrast and it's our behavior within that contrast that's going to make all the difference. Um, I do want to address your inquiry by sharing, many people are aware of Ho'oponopono, which is this protocol of ancient Hawaii. And I was taught Ho'oponopono by my elders, and there's something that actually activates Ho'oponopono that's not mentioned today. Today, the Ho'oponopono that many people practice, it's actually missing its first step. And the first step is acceptance. We must come into acceptance. And for you, right, the varying, the contrast to which you're just sharing with us, We must all hold that in acceptance because without acceptance, we're going to be fighting it. We're going to attempt to manipulate it or intervene in something. And we all know, right, that our other galactic family, they honor that code of conduct called non-intervention.
Mm.
But we humans, we're really fascinated with intervention, right? We really want to jump into other people's things and bodies and whatnot and try to like be a puppeteer, something like that. It's very strange. It's very strange, right? Like the galaxy, our galactic family's like, why do they do that? Well, because we're missing the first step of Ho'oponopono, which is also a galactic protocol, and it's acceptance. First, acceptance, and that satiates our need to intervene. And that's where we can begin with the healing process by first coming from a place of acceptance.
Thank you for clarifying that for me because that the acceptance is something I'm really good at. So no wonder I handle anything with ease and flow and just appreciate the experience.
Ah, yeah, sister.
Mm. In closing, Keoni, is there anything that feels very alive for you? Even because we are accelerating so rapidly, so many new expansions are occurring from week to week as we're heading to the year's end. What are you feeling? What are you anticipating in the air that you would like to perhaps comment on?
I would love to share what happens from C7
Mm.
because of course cervical vertebrae it's all about spiritualization, and so many of us, we've come into fluency of the actual process of materialization. We maybe begin to feel ourselves coming into a kind of spiritualization, and so I want to give a little detail as to what the spinal cord shares about our process of spiritualization. When we go from C7, C6, the code is song. Now, song means, because remember, C7 is involution. We're making an assessment of ourselves. We're reading our own crystal. Song means we're able to express that. And the contrast to which you're speaking into is let's make a lot of room for ourselves and our brothers and our sisters to truly express who they are, independent of what they're being told is approved. This is also why I share we're going to come into the age of Aquarius and realizing that there's actually 8 billion calendars,
Mm.
and not to subordinate someone in an approved calendar that now supposed to govern everyone. That's becoming irrational too, especially when we come into spiritualization. Something like that, it's now irrational. That doesn't make any sense. And for the viewers, Julia and I, we had a little glitch coming on to our conversation today because Hawaii does not change our clock, but of course Europe does change their clocks. And so even that, right, there's like this little glitch. And so we're even coming into like, wow, this doesn't feel good. Song, that code of song is once you make an assessment, can you share that? And my grandmother would say, boy, as much as you deserve to share, we deserve what you have to share.
Mm.
Because if you don't tell us, if you don't share, we don't know how to love you.
Mm.
Don't assume we know how to love you. You get to teach us. That's C6. That's song. Now we're expressing our assessment. When we go to C5, the code of C5 is miracles. Miracle literally means the actual reality. Because once I express who I truly am, guess what's going to happen? Because the universe is diplomatic, it's finally going to meet me.
Mm.
Because a majority of my adolescent and adult life, I was always depleted and exhausted. And I said, why do I have this experience? And I said, oh, it's because when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I think of is, how do I need to adapt to the world? What do I need to do to please the world today? I forgot that the world can also adapt to me, but it needs me to be able to express who I am because the universe is friendly. It wants to meet us where we are, but we have to speak up. And so with that song, we're finally sharing, this is who I am. This is how I'm properly loved. Miracles comes in, the perspective, the flavor of our reality is going to change drastically because the world is going to adapt to us as well. And from there, Then we go into full on spiritualization. But those are like, I would say those first three codes are so incredibly important to begin an oscillation of speed. The first is involution. Please, let's all make an assessment. Let's come and read our own crystal. C6 song. Once I've made that assessment, can I express it or am I going to hoard it? I'm going to be brave and I'm going to express who I truly am so that the world and everyone in the world and this universe knows how to properly love me. C5, the miracle occurs when the actual reality of this universe actually comes into view because it's also meeting me. I'm not always having to meet the world. Power must be met with power as to ensure that nothing or no one is overpowered.
Profound. And we have witnessed it many times with people who have this precise shift in consciousness, how the volume of synchronicity and magic happens and how life aligns to meet you based on that shifted perception of being the creator. The world adapts to you. It's magical how malleable the reality is based on where we stand. Thank you for sharing that, Ke'oni. What are your current or upcoming events or workshops, or where can we learn more from you?
I have an ongoing free membership, virtual membership of Ulu, we've been discussing the spinal cord in today's conversation, and I go in depth into the technology and the spirituality of Ulu in this free virtual membership. Everyone's invited, and there's a lot of information, a lot of replays of previous ceremonies on that in that membership. And so I invite everyone from time to time. I intermittently do a live ceremony as well, invite everyone to converge. It's always really fun to come to the lives. We have a really huge group, and it's just nice to also hear. I love interaction when I'm facilitating, and so it's so beautiful to feel and to sense other people's experiences as they come into the completion of their materialization and the opening of their spiritualization. And that's something that's completely ongoing, this membership. So I invite everyone to join us. And then the Ulu book, to which Julia, you so beautifully and lovingly referenced in our conversation too, is also accessible. It's a great companion to the online, to the membership. And so I would invite people to pick up the book. I'm working on another book. So this Ulu book is a primer to a book that I'm currently editing right now about the genealogy of Mu. And so Ulu was a way to kind of put our toes in the water as I bring my entire ancestral and my own spiritual memory of the civilization of Mu to the forefront.
Beautiful. When I was reading the book, I was imagining what it would be like to read it as someone who didn't yet hear about what you're teaching. And it is brilliant foundational work that is such an eye-opener, such an expansion of consciousness in a very graceful, gentle, beautiful way. So it's wonderful to hear that more is coming. Yeah, you did
Oh yeah,
beautiful work.
hello.
Mhm.
And I'm curious, Sister Julia, we opened our conversation with talking about Hyperborea and I shared about the man and I just know that you're so grounded and you have this beaming crystal that you have access to. And just for my own sake, because I'm so curious, Sister Julia, is there anything you want to share about Hyperborea that feels so relevant for us right now?
Thank you. Well, there is one information that I would love to share just from the conversation I had with Martha Alter Hines, which is now available on both our channels, where she had a conversation just before recording with me with a lady who speaks of her people of Scotland, speaking of the ancients, of the immortals in the north. They have a different word for it that escaped me, but essentially speaking of the Hyperborean mythology that it is linked to the genetics of the Scottish. And I believe, Ke'oni, you hold that lineage, and so does Martha as well. And I'm not sure if I have Scottish, but I know I have Nordic. I did the DNA check just to see if I have any Irish roots, but it's Nordic countries, so I might need to dig deeper. But it's quite fascinating that I wanted to share that with you, that there could be one more link, one more puzzle piece for you through that Scottish
Wow.
genealogy that you hold that is in fact connecting to Hyperborea, and the fact that it's conjunct your natal Neptune, there is something there for you, you
That
know?
is fascinating, Julia. Thank you so much. This really deepens my expedition because so I'm friends with Matthias de Stefano, and he
Wonderful.
believes that the Scottish lineage or the Scottish code is that to which actually disrupted time.
Ah,
Time. And so like the Genesis, right? It's like something occurred, the Scottish lineage somehow activated the actual timeline
mm.
that we seem to be in right now. So this is just so fascinating. Yes, and I am half Scottish. So wow, yeah, fun. Thank you for sharing this, sister.
Yes. I believe Matthias is kind of on a mission to correct the time or correct the error of something that occurred, right? It's
Yep.
amazing to watch his journey and the level of magic that he's experiencing.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I'm so glad to hear it. And for those who are hearing this for the first time, I also want to invite the viewer to watch the video presentation I did on ancient asteroids in our natal birth charts as a reflection to the memories of the ancient Lemuria, Atlantis, and ancient Egypt, where the first case study that I presented was Ke'oni's chart. And um, something that I didn't include in my research, but just knowing that Ke'oni, your very first living recorded ancestors had the North Star Alpha Cephei
Mhm.
that they held as their North Star. And for you having that North Star conjunct Eris, I believe, in Aries, so that was another beautiful validation of you actually holding. So now from both ends, the ancient Lemurian through the your family's lineage North Star through Eris and
Wow.
Neptune through the Scottish and the Hyperborea. How amazing.
That's so amazing. And thank you so much, Julia. You're such a maestro when it comes to decoding someone's chart. And so like, yeah, I would, if the audience, if you have not had the honor of Julia guiding you through your chart, because Julia goes into like the mysticism, like the things that are hidden in your chart. And yeah, sister, when you open that up, it was just like it just got offered me so much. I felt so much more connected to my lineage because of what you uncovered. And so I'm so grateful to you, sister.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about that. What was the effect of that? So would you say if there was any lingering doubt in you that it was just cleared as a result?
Like absolutely cleared, no obstruction whatsoever. Yeah.
Beautiful. What an honor, what a privilege to be able to comprehend this and seeing these clues. And I always guide my students who are passionate about this type of work, just let your natural curiosity to guide you. That's how I roll, and that's how everything is revealed. So it's just beautiful. Thank you, Kenny. This
Oh,
is fun. And thank you all for joining us, for listening. Let us know in the comments how this resonated with you and where are you at in your current journey of remembering, of returning to your center. What are you remembering? What are you awakening? Thank you for helping through your own healing, through your own remembering, making it easier for everyone else. I feel there is a ripple effect. The more of us start embodying this understanding, the easier it gets for everyone else, right? The epiphanies and activations and integrations seem to be happening faster and faster. Are you noticing that in your community too?
most certainly. Yeah. And with cohesion as well, which is so great. Yeah.
Mm, beautiful. Well, thank you all. And until next time, much love. Take care.
Aloha Ma.